Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on, guys? It's Filthy and I'm back with another video. Today we're looking at Helltooth, which is going to be the starting set for the Witch Doctor for Season 19. Now the set isn't particularly great for pushing, Jade is better and Legacy of Dreams Carnival will leave this in the dust. But what the set is very good at is key farming, T16 and bounties, that sort of thing. So in the background I'll be showing some T16 footage and also some speed rifting, GR75, which we're getting done in about 3.5–4 minutes depending on the map. One thing I should say, guys, is we are using the full 1200 Paragon that I've got. It's kind of offset by the fact that my gear isn't particularly great and also the fact that there is no season theme, so I think this will probably be about the equivalent of 800 Paragon. Fairly nice gear and also the season theme. We'll have to see just how strong that is when it actually launches on live. And augment wise, guys, there's only 3 really low level ones, so 75, 80 and 81 I think, so obviously not much to write home about, and this would obviously do a lot better with a load more main stat dumped on it, whether that's in Paragon or in augmentation. And before we jump in and look at everything, I just want to welcome anyone who's new to the channel. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and as always, guys, a thumbs up is greatly appreciated. And one of the things that I really love about this build is it is incredibly fast, so it's very similar to the Chicken Dock build, the Turbo Chicken from Big Daddy Den. It's pretty much just a little bit of a rework from that. So if you do play Witch Doctor, go check his channel out, he's got tons of guides, loads of really good information. But looking at Helltooth, the 2-piece, when we hit with primary skills or with our gargs, we're going to get Necrosis. That's going to be 3000% weapon damage over 10 seconds. Doesn't really do any damage, but it is handy that the gargs will activate this because the 4-piece will give us 60% damage reduction once we apply Necrosis to an enemy. Now we're going to be taking the Gold Wrap Boon of the Hoarder combo, so we will be pretty much immortal, but every so often we won't have gold up, and with this Necrosis effect it means that we can take one hit before dying, so we don't get totally one shot, albeit it'll depend exactly what the hit is, so it is kind of handy that we get the 60% damage reduction, and obviously it's very handy for the GR version. Now the 6-piece is where all the damage comes from. After casting Wall of Death we gain 9000% increased damage for 15 seconds, the only skill that we're going to be using today is going to be the gargs, so after we activate Wall of Death we get 15 seconds of 9000% damage, obviously pretty handy. Now because this is a garg build, we're going to be taking the Short Man's Finger. This is going to give 3 smaller gargantuans, which is nice, and they all have the damage increased by up to 650%. To toss up whether this or your other multiplicative ring, the Convention of Elements, will go in the cube. You just want to pick whichever one rolls the best. Other multiplier wise, we're also going to be taking a Mask of Jerem in the cube. This is going to give 200% extra damage. We're going to put this in the cube because we don't want to be taking the Rogue for the T16 version. And then also in the cube we're going to be taking the Sacred Harvester, so Soul Harvest will now stack up 10 times. Again, this is interchangeable with our other weapon, which is the Echoing Fury. This says that slaying enemies engulfs the wielder into a frenzy. Basically it means we get a 75% attack speed and also a 75% move speed bonus once this gets up to 5 stacks, so it's 15% per stack. Now you can put this in a cube and it might well be slightly better because although the damage range on this is slightly higher than the Ceremonial Knife, I think, what the problem is on the secondary there's a chance to fear, so it is a little bit annoying. We've got 2 mechanisms to stop enemies running away, but it might be slightly more beneficial to have a Sacred Harvester on the character and no Echoing Fury in the cube. Now we're going to be taking a Spite. This is a craftable mojo, so you just have to find the plans for this, and this will give the gargantuans the cleave and chilling effect of the Humungoid rune. This is important when we get to the skills because it means we're no longer tied to Humungoid, which is pretty much the only rune that we'll traditionally ever run gargs with. Also, to boost our damage we're going to be taking a Stone of Jordan. So this will give us 20% extra physical because we'll be taking the physical rune on the gargs, and we also get 30% extra damage against elites. And because we move so quickly we're pretty much an elite sniper. We can blow up trash, it's fine to do so, but elites are kind of what we want, so the extra damage against them is good because it means we can kill them quicker and then scoot on off to the next pack. And Convention of Elements will give us pretty big spike damage. Again, when we roll around to physical, there's nothing you need to do, you don't need to worry about casting your gargs in line with this, but obviously when it does roll around it is mega damage and things will just completely blow up if your gargs hit something whilst on physical rotation. Legendary gem wise, Enforcer will give us a flat multiplier to the gargs and it'll mean that they never die, which is nice. Bane of the Trapped will again be a flat damage increase because the gargs have the chill from Humungoid. This is always procced, so they're always getting this multiplier as well. We don't have to be within 15 yards. And finally, returning to the Echoing Fury, the 75% attack speed obviously does benefit the gargs. They are capped at 40%, so we don't make the full use out of it, but this does get up to 5 stacks very quickly, and that means that the gargs do hit an awful lot harder. Not a damage buff per se, but the Flavour of Time will give us extra damage when we get a good pylon. This is fast becoming one of my favourite items in the game. We get double pylon duration, so if we do get lucky, we hit a power or a conduit pylon, then so much the better. We're going to be even stronger throughout the rift. And rounding out the gear, the gold wrap is going to make us immortal because our last legendary gem is the Boon of the Hoarder. So when enemies get killed, they drop gold, we get 30% increased move speed, which is nice, and also the gold wrap will give us such high armour that we're practically immortal. And lastly, because it's a T16 speed build, we're going to go for Nemesis braces. We'll spawn an extra champion every time we click a pylon, very handy for progression, collecting DBs and that sort of thing. Just make sure you get a physical roll on there for your damage and you should be good to go. Now for gems, we're going to be taking intelligence gems in the trousers and chest. Obviously that's just more damage, which is nice. And then for the helm, I've gone for the extra gold, so rolling with an emerald, but by all means you can put a cooldown gem in here. That would give you a bit more uptime on your skills, which would be no bad thing. Or you could go for a life gem if you wanted to, again try and offset that one shot problem that you've got if you don't have gold. But I like the extra gold, and T16 is pretty much a lot about gold farming now because we do push so high into rifts. I find that gold is probably a bit more important than it was, so I'd go with the green gem in the helm. Now looking at the skills, Piranha-Nado, this is a grouping skill, so we click this and it creates a tornado sucking enemies in. It will still periodically suck enemies towards it. So this is kind of nice if you want to group up a big group of trash or you want to lock the elite in place. You can just cast this and then you drop your gargs on them and they should blow up pretty quickly. It's on a 16-second cooldown, costs 250 mana, but it's the only spender we've got, so we've got no resource problems at all. Wall of Death, we need this for the 9000% garg buff, so we're going to be activating this as soon as we get into the rift, and then just periodically whenever we want. Now, we do get a 25% debuff with the Communing with Spirits rune. There aren't really any other great runes to take. Again, this will help us with the whole one-shot problem, so at least if we debuff an enemy, if we do run out of gold, it's going to do us a little bit less damage. Soul Harvest, Soul to Waste. Now, when we activate this, it can stack up to 10 times because of the Sacred Harvester in the cube. We get 3% intelligence per stack, so that's 30% extra int, so that's an awful lot of damage and a bit more damage reduction. But we also get 5% move speed per stack, so 10 stacks is an extra 50%, so we do zip about pretty quickly because we've got the 75% from the Echoing Fury, and adding this 50% on means that we can run around very quickly. Horrify Stalker is also extra move speed, so 20% for 4 seconds. I unlock this because I'm lazy and I can't be bothered activating it. But it does also have another interesting secondary property, so it will immobilize and root enemies to the ground in fear, so they can't run away, so that's quite handy. So if you do cast this on a pack of elites or a big group of trash, it will pretty much stay there, so that's quite nice. Gargantuan Restless Giants, this is how we're going to deal all of our damage, obviously through the gargs. Now because we don't have to take Humungoid, we're basically interested in the last property here, which is the 200% physical damage increase for 15 seconds. So this happens whenever they encounter elite or 5 enemies. They basically get this enraged effect. The move speed doesn't matter, they'll not be able to keep up with us because we move so fast. The attack speed doesn't matter because of the Echoing Fury, but the physical damage is nice, and this effect can occur every 45 seconds. Lasts for 15 seconds, so it's kind of like a third of the time your gargs are doing an extra 200% damage, which obviously is nice. Spirit Walk Severance, this is how we're going to get around the map. We leave our body for 2 seconds and gain 100% extra move speed. We've already got tons of move speed, but this is just another 100%. We also become completely impervious and immune to everything whilst we've got this going off, so it's quite handy if we do want to avoid damage and we don't have gold wrap up. I like Severance for the extra move speed, but you could swap this to Jaunt and get a 3rd second, so 3-second duration rather than 2. But as I say, Severance for me and the move speed seems to be the best. Passives wise, I've gone for Spirit Vessel. That's definitely number one. You don't want to take this off because if you do not have access to gold, you will get squished because we've, as you've noticed, probably not stacked any other defense. Midnight Feast again is another one I'm dead set on. 50% extra damage for the gargs. They will hit obviously a lot harder with this. Pierce the Veil will give us an extra 20% damage. The trade-off is that our mana costs are increased by 30%. As we only have Paragon as a spender and we don't get access to it all of the time, it seems like this is a fairly good trade because we don't have resource problems, so we may as well take 20% extra damage at all times. And then the last passive that I've gone for is Grave Injustice. Now this is probably a little bit debatable. We get heal, which is not really useful because of the gold wrap and Boon of the Hoarder. But what happens is if we do kill stuff within 20 yards, we get a 1 second reduction in all of our cooldowns. Obviously that means we have to be up close and personal within 20 yards, but this will help an awful lot with the gargs because what it will mean is because the gargs run such a huge cooldown, because when we kill stuff with Grave Injustice and we're close, the cooldown will come down very quickly and it means we can recast our gargs on top of whatever we want. It's also very useful if we do actually die, because if we do proc the cheat death and then we die and we don't have the gargs up, we can't do any damage, so you want to get your gargs back out as soon as possible. So having them off cooldown is obviously a good thing, and Grave Injustice does help with that a lot. The other passive I was trying was Confidence Ritual, an extra 25% damage for enemies within 20 yards. So again, not a particularly bad choice, and also Fierce Loyalty would give us even more move speed, but to be honest, with that maxed out with move speed, then another 30% probably is not going to be here nor there. If you wanted to smooth the build over for a little bit more toughness, you could go for Swampland Attunement, which would give us extra resistances for every enemy within 20 yards. But I just find that Grave Injustice is my favourite, and that's the one that I've been playing with. Now in terms of playstyle, as we said, we're going to numlock Horrify just because I'm lazy and I can't be bothered pressing it. We're going to activate Wall of Death as soon as we get into the Rift. We're also going to activate the Gargs as soon as we get into the Rift. The next goal then is to get the Soul Harvest stacks up to 10, so we're going to look to do that as soon as possible. Other than that, we're going to zip around with Spirit Walk Severance, group mobs up with the Paragon, and then drop the Gargs on whatever it is we want to blow up. Now we do move so fast that the Gargs will lag behind, but they will teleport back to us, so they will keep up. Eventually they just reappear next to us, but it is handy being able to drop them on a specific target. And you pretty much want to flip from elite to elite pack really. You can stop and kill big groups of trash, absolutely no problem with that, but the fastest way to do this will be to find pylons, get the benefit out of the flavour of time, and also use your nemesis braces as much as possible. The RNG for the pylons does dictate how quick the rift is going to be, but because we have so much move speed we can cover an awful lot of ground, so if we do get a rubbish map it's fine, we can speed through it pretty quickly. Now in terms of the GR version, we obviously have to stack quite a lot of toughness because we're dropping the gold wrap belt because we don't get any gold in rifts. Now the main toughness item we're going to be taking is Lakumba's Ornament. This will give us a 6% damage reduction for every stack of Soul Harvest we have. So because we've got Soul Harvester still in the build, that's 10 stacks and a 60% damage reduction. I really would like to take the Nemesis Braces here, it does speed up rifts quite a lot, but I just kind of can't work out a way to get the toughness without sacrificing too much damage. So the other swap we're going to do is we're going to take the Captain Crimson set. We obviously have to take the belt, and then it's going to be a case of boots or trousers depending on which rolls better. 2-piece gives us extra 20% cooldown and 20% cooldown reduction. Generally they would be absolutely worthless to a Garg build. Well, not worthless, the cooldown I suppose is okay, but the 3-piece is what makes this worthwhile because we get a damage increase up to our cooldown reduction. We also get a damage reduction up to our resource cost reduction. So that means that we can stack cooldown and resource cost reduction, and the build just functions better because it's more damage, more toughness. Because we're now only taking 5 pieces of the Helltooth set, we're going to have a Rogue. Probably best in the cube because it always rolls with life on hit, which isn't very useful, but the only Garg ring I have I stuffed in the cube ages ago, so I need to find another one. Gem in the helm I would swap to resource cost reduction if you want more toughness, or a cooldown gem if you want more damage. You're going to replace your Boon of the Hoarder with Bane of the Powerful. This will give you extra damage against elites, which will offset the loss of the Stone of Jordan, and we also get extra damage once we kill an elite pack, again offsetting the damage loss of the Stone of Jordan. In terms of the skills, all that we're going to change is the rune on Soul Harvest, so we're going to pick Languish to get extra armour, so again 10% per stack, 100% extra armour. Horrify, again we're going to go for armour, so an extra 50%, this does help boost the toughness considerably. You could go for the zombie dogs, leeching dogs to get some sustain, but because it's a speed build, we just really care about not dying instantly to stuff. We want to damage stuff and get on to the next pack, so I prefer this one. And then the only thing you're going to change in the passives is you're going to have to take out Pierce the Veil, because the negative 30% mana cost will not work very well with your Crimson set, because remember, we're getting damage reduction per mana resource reduction. So we're going to put Swampland Attunement in. This means that the more enemies we get within 20 yards, the more our toughness goes up, and that's handy because again, it's the same playstyle. Group up with Piranha Nado, drop the gargs on, and generally speaking we're going to be a little bit close and personal, so the extra toughness does benefit. Playstyle is exactly the same. We're obviously just an awful lot tougher in this build, which is why we can do 75. And the damage loss isn't too great, and again, it's a very kind of elite snipery build. You really want to be focusing on elites, pulling as much trash towards them as you can, and then blowing them up with gargs and area damage. So in terms of gearing tips, the Captain Crimson set is craftable. You just have to find the plan in the season. Same as we say for the Spite, it's craftable. The good news though is because they are craftable, it's fairly okay to get decent ones. So in terms of stat priorities, I'd make a decision as to whether you do want to run this for GR speeds or not, because if you do, then I would try and gear for cooldown, which will benefit you from the Crimsons, and it will also help you with your gargs anyway for T16. But if you just want to stick to T16, you can forget cooldown and you just want to max out damage. So obviously good rolls to get would be garg damage, area damage every way you can get it, double crits obviously as well, and main stat is very useful because of our Soul Harvester in the cube. The one stat that we don't need is attack speed, because the Echoing Fury will cover all the attack speed we need, so pretty much full damage stats, and that will allow us to do T16 and GR75. So my life pool's pretty low, about 500k, so I obviously could put some vitality points in here, maybe take a couple of defensive rolls, and it would mean the build would be a little less squishy, but I'm looking to do 75 in the quickest time possible, so I've pretty much just made it as damaging as I can. In terms of Paragon, whilst you're going, you don't need any points in maximum mana, move speed up to 25%, and then the rest in intelligence, unless you're finding yourself too squishy, in which case you can put some vitality. For offense, you don't need attack speed straight away if you do have a Echoing Fury, but if you don't have one, you're going to want attack speed. Then you're going to want the crits and then cooldown reduction. Again, unless you're doing the GR version, in which case cooldown does become a bit more important. For defense, you want armor, life percent, all res, and life regen. And utility, you definitely want area damage, resource cost reduction, life per hit, and gold find. And as always guys, there is a D3 planner link in the description with all the recommended stats. So that's the build guys. It is very good for T16 and for keys. It is very quick, it does have a lot of power, and the gargs do hit pretty hard. It's just sort of behind some of the other Witch Doctor sets and builds. Now in terms of pushing or maybe switching to bounties, you're probably going to have to take a Compass Rose and Traveller's Pledge. That will give you extra toughness whilst you move and extra damage whilst you stand still. I'd probably look to replace the Flavour of Time and Convention of Elements for those, but you could always ditch the Crimson set and put on a Witching Hour. Now I'll put a link in the description to Big Daddy Den's Helltooth push guide, because as I say, I haven't really pushed with this myself, so I don't want to say definitely do this, definitely do the other. But again, those kind of swaps are going to help you for bounties because you're going to need toughness. The other option for bounties is to just run the T16 one and do public bounties and basically don't kill any bosses, because without gold you will get squished. So that's the build guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave me a thumbs up and I will see you again very soon. Peace.